and welcome to episode 1 of the Business of Finance podcast. Today, our podcast will be debuted by Kristy, Jasper and Rosie O'Callaghan, co-founders of JasperRose Recruitment, which specialises in hiring finance talent at all levels across the consumer sector. They will be sharing their market expertise about hiring in the finance market, including candidate expectations, salary and market trends, hybrid working and the pandemic's lingering effects. If you like what you hear, please tune in for future episodes where we will be inviting industry leaders within the finance space to speak on their specialisms and insights. This is the Business of Finance.
Morning, Kristy.
Morning, Rosie.
How are you?
Yeah, very well. How are you?
Yes, good. Very excited for our first episode of our new podcast, our Business and Finance podcast.
Definitely. I think just to explain actually to our listeners, the reason why we have started our podcast is to get candidates, clients, our network together and to hear insights from our market leaders. So we've got some amazing topics that we'll be covering over the course of the next 12 months. I think for us today, Rosie and I thought we'd start it and we would discuss really recruitment trends, what's happened, maybe a summary of last year and really what we foresee happening over the next 12 months. I've been off on maternity leave. I came back to work, end of Q2 last year. So Rosie's probably, you're better informed to tell me about last year and how crazy it was.
Well, all I'll say is I have been working in accountancy recruitment for, dare I say it, 14 years now. And it is the craziest market I've ever worked in. There was a big lull, obviously, during COVID where there was minimal hiring going on to it going to 1,000 miles an hour. So there was a backlog of hiring from COVID, so lots of businesses then kick-started their hiring plans in 2022. There was the Great Resignation where people had sat tight for a couple of years and then thought, actually, time for me to move. So it was challenging, I have to say. It was sort of the candidate had the power.
Which is what we call a candidate-led market, and it massively was.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So quite often, candidates would have 3, 4, 5 offers going on at one go, and it was really who got to the candidate quick enough and who could pay enough. So salaries obviously massively increased off the back of that as well.
Yes, actually that's a subject we can touch on a bit later. I think, if we think about now in terms of the job flow though, do you feel, I certainly do, coming into this year, feel like it's really stabilised?
Yeah, definitely. It's it feels, well, if we look at our statistics in terms of JasperRose, actually job flows back to pre-COVID levels in 2019, which is really positive. So it feels a much more balanced market. It's not sort of huge amount of vacancies and not enough candidates. It's now as it was pre-COVID, I would say, which is good to see, because I actually came into 2023 thinking, oh God, obviously lots of talk about recession. Is anyone even going to be hiring? But actually we've seen that it's been really positive and lots of people still are going ahead and recruiting for vacancies, especially when we do consumer. That's often one of the first industries to be hit, but people are obviously still spending and companies are hiring.
Which is great. And I think for me as well, if I think about the end of last year, the recruitment trends in the market completely changed to when I went on maternity leave. Even, the pace, like you said, for us now, we're much more focused around getting in front of our clients, getting back in front of our candidates and really sort of forming better relationships, where last year it just seemed it was so chaotic. No one had enough time, be it the client to hire, the candidate because they had so many interviews, and the consultant because there was so much demand on both sides. So I think for us this year, hopefully it's going to sort of be a much better methodical approach to recruitment and stronger relationships that we've always formed.
Yeah, I think another thing I really noticed last year was pre-COVID, when people were in the offices more, interviews were all in person, whereas last year obviously everything was remote, which is great because it saves everyone a lot of time. However, what I found was candidates might be dipping their toe in the market or being really proactive in their search, but they can do 5 interviews in a week without having to take any time off, because
less time investment,
their lunch break. And whereas before it was like they had to think really seriously, is this a job I want to go to? Am I prepared to book half a day off to go to the offices and
do the research? Exactly.
Whereas actually it's much more easy to interview for a job when it's remote, which obviously candidates then were more likely to have sort of more job offers because they're in more processes.
So, I mean, for us now, we've sort of seen a shift. I would say in the recruitment world, we say there's two ways at the minute. Sorry, there's two ways. Either a candidate-led market or a client-led market. I would say it's not fully shifted to a client-led market as such at the minute, but I do foresee that happening towards sort of Q2, Q3 of this year. Do you agree?
Yeah, completely agree. I definitely think so. I think,
And what actually, just explaining what we mean by that is, like you said, a candidate-led market is when they've got 4 or 5 multiple offers. A client-led market is when the client has, can have the pick of the bunch, because there will be a lot of candidates out there looking. They might want 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 key skills that we would normally have to consult them to say, well, actually, what's the priority or what's the order of preference? They will be able to demand that.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Which
more,
last year was about
less jobs than there are candidates. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly that.
So just on that then, actually, because I found, again, it was crazy, the inflation on salaries and even if we look at sort of a newly qualified was demanding. I mean, what do you think on that? Or actually, maybe give an example.
I always use this example when I'm speaking to people. It's those people coming from out of the big four, having done an audit role, newly qualified, 2020, 2021, the standard salary was 50,000 if you've just qualified and you're moving into industry. Now it's absolutely 55,000. They won't go for 50,000, sometimes even 60,000. So that just gives you an idea. I think the challenge with that for companies is, they've hired all these people a year earlier who are on 50. You've then got someone coming in with 1 year's less experience on 55. So it's managing that internally, and it's difficult to do because you then got to bump everyone's salaries up.
Is that happening, do you think?
I've had conversations with businesses, and they're trying to navigate it, I would say, in terms of, they've obviously got budgets in place and they're having to pay more for these newly qualifieds, but then they've got to manage the internal people as well to be able to retain them, because understandably you would be frustrated if you were that person who joined a year earlier and on less salary.
So, I mean, do you think, better informed than I am, I think, after experiencing last year fully, that the inflation on salaries will stay overinflated for the skill set required?
Where we said, as we said, it will become less of a candidate-led market. I think it will probably balance out a bit more and, I'm already seeing this year candidates being less about the salary and it's more about the overall package. I think some candidates have also learnt from last year. I had a call with someone yesterday. He got a 20 grand pay rise, and he said, I've made a mistake. I went for the money and the role's not right. So I think people are learning that it's not all about that. And what I'm seeing a massive drive for is actually, what is the company doing to give back to their employees? What's their corporate social responsibility policy? And those are often the key drivers, obviously along with a good base salary, but not a massively inflated salary. So I think the total package and what they get in return and the hybrid working, that seems to be just as much of a driver for candidates.
Definitely. And again, on the hybrid working, I mean, that was a shock to me. It was a shock to us as a business, wasn't it? When COVID hit and it was like remote working, what's all this? Obviously, we've adapted as has every business. But I mean, I think for us at JasperRose, we are a hybrid working business, and that's working really well for both us and also our employees and attracting people. What would you say, based on sort of, I suppose, speaking to clients, is the normal now hybrid working from home? What would you say the standard policy is?
I would say definitely the norm is 3 days in the office, 2 days at home, or 2 days in the office, 3 days at home. There are businesses who are doing 4 or 5 days. I think the challenge with that is some candidates are actually very open to going in 4 to 5 days a week. But if you say to a candidate, actually it's 5 day a week office working, it's not that they've necessarily got a problem with that, but it's more the business is seen as sort of old-fashioned and archaic for not having a hybrid policy. So that's often the challenge. Equally, we've had a couple of fully remote roles recently, and lots of people are saying no to it because they want a bit of office interaction and don't want to just be sitting behind a screen all day, which I totally understand. I would find it hard to do that if I was fully remote myself. But I would say actually it's, obviously the hybrid pattern is important to a lot of people, but it's more the flexibility around
the mentality of the company.
Mentality, but also the flexibility around hours. I think that's just as important. So, working parents, sorting out childcare, not just working parents, but people having time to fulfill their personal lives as well as professional. So maybe having flexi hours, that's a big thing as well. That's, people really value that and appreciate that, I think, especially having worked at home for so long during the COVID period. They get used to fulfilling their personal lives as well as professional.
I think that the work-life balance has really shifted since COVID. When we actually looked at our clients, 92% of them had really spent time and changed their sort of working flexi hour policy, hybrid policy. There was only sort of a few that remained strong in sticking to pre-COVID working in the office 5 days a week. So it's definitely it's not the norm now.
No, I think what I would say, I think 95% of companies I'm working with do now have a policy. I think it's important for companies to have a policy because it's challenging if you're hiring and saying, oh, well, we're doing 1 day at the moment, but that could increase. It's like people want to know black and white, is this right for them if they're joining a business, and not join and within a month they say, okay, we're going up to 3 or 4 days. So I think it's important to get that policy right. But also for companies to maintain some sort of flexibility around each individual depending on their personal circumstances.
What I would say from this conversation and our research, it's very hard for a business. The mindset and the mentality, has been for us, has had to shift dramatically, but in a positive way. So actually, sort of moving on in terms of subject wise, if we look at the individuals that we placed, let's say last year, the year before, what we had a lack of, which we have always placed lots of, is South Africans, Australians, New Zealanders, Europeans, and that's all really, really shifted. So that's been a massive loss to us as a business, and especially actually in the contract market, where majority of roles we worked on were filled by those types of individuals. So again, it'd be good to get your insight of what individuals have come through that we're placing more of, and what the trends will be maybe this year.
I think that was a huge challenge sort of during COVID and after the lack of Australians and Kiwis coming over here. Obviously they were in total lockdown, not able to leave the country. And for the interim market, that was challenging. So, they're back in full force, all backlog of people wanting to move over here, experience the London life. So that's great. But I think in that, and then coupled with that, you had obviously COVID and Brexit, with lots of Europeans moving home to be closer to their families. So I think that's been the biggest impact, really. We recruit for quite a lot of language roles, and it's been I've got a French speaking role at the moment. It's a real struggle to find people new talent coming into the markets with those language skills. I think one thing I have found the last couple of years actually is really high quality talent in the market is candidates coming across from Hong Kong. So the government introduced these BNO visas.
Do you mind explaining what BNO visas are?
As much as I possibly can, So it's a visa that sort of someone wants to move across from Hong Kong. They can apply for it, and I believe it's you can either apply for a 2-year or a 5-year visa, but then it can then extend. So unlike the Australians and Kiwis who there's a 2-year cap on the visa, you can hire these candidates sort of on a permanent basis more easily. I would say a lot of them have come from some really good companies, Big Four. Obviously, we recruit in the consumer space, so a lot have worked for kind of the Asian head offices in Hong Kong for
Yeah.
large consumer businesses. So, and where they're coming over to the London market, they're open to sort of exploring both contract and permanent opportunities. So that's been a big success for a lot of our clients,
Great.
actually. Hiring people with those skill sets, and I think really, really top talent in the market at the moment, I would say.
Yes, definitely. Well, that's great. Great to hear.
Yeah.
And just, I think, another subject that to me has come up quite often with our clients is retention. I mean, it seems like it's a topic that regardless of the market, regardless of the economy, retention is always a big thing. But I think what clients will be focusing on certainly this year is retaining staff, and it's like, how do they do that? Bringing in, like you said, these policies so people have got clarity around work-life balance and working from home, flexi hours, that kind of thing. But actually, I think people have recognised more than ever the time it takes. For actually, you said something last week to me about.
I think we looked at some statistics, and it takes on average 50 hours to recruit someone into your business and train them. So, it's not it is the cost of someone leaving, of course, and their knowledge of the business, but it's the time it takes to recruit
It's
someone.
phenomenal.
Companies are, of course, far better off trying to keep the talent that they've got than let them go and have to go through that whole cycle. So I think retention is a massive thing, and we often get people asking us, don't they, sort of comparing their businesses to others in the market to make sure they're on trend as such. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but I would say the last 2 months, where the economy's a little bit unstable, shall we say, counter offers are happening, and candidates are being wooed by these counter offers because companies are saying to them, well, hang on, you've been with us 6 years. Why would you leave at this time when the market's unstable and go into a probation period again? So that's been a challenge. I think candidates thinking they want to leave, dipping their toe in their market, and then getting an offer and then realising actually don't quite have the confidence to make that move and are accepting these counter offers.
Yes. Yeah, no, I've definitely seen that. I think what I have also seen is, in the period of COVID, a lot of HR and people talent, people, head of people, they were removed from the business because of the cost. I'd say there's been a massive influx of reinvestment in that area to really enable there to be better retention, better benefits, better employee perks and reviews, promotions, so people and individuals, employees are recognised more and feel more valued. So I think there's definitely been a more shift of investment from a client side to that side. So I think actually, if we're talking as JasperRose, we are really optimistic, albeit cautiously optimistic, going into this year in terms of a steady flow of jobs coming in due to growth, due to change in terms of people leaving and people hiring, and maybe a bit of a reorganisation within businesses. I would say it is going to be a steady job flow market, and I would say rather than it being crazy like last year, I would say relationships will be key in this market. So relationships that you've got internally, relationships clients have got with consultants, relationships consultants have got with candidates, and vice versa. So I think it will be a much better market where I think clients and candidates will have more time and be better informed about making a decision to move and change their career.
Yeah, completely agree. Definitely. I think it will be an interesting year to see what comes. What are your predictions for this year then?
I would say a steady job flow. I would say, like I said, in terms of, I think a candidate, rather than it being maybe that they had 4 or 5 offers, they will have two offers that they've put a lot of time and thought into, and it's not a rushed process. Equally with a client, I think, like we said, it will be a more client-led market towards the middle to end of next year, end of this year. So they will be in a strong position hiring the right people into the business rather than maybe making a decision not quite looking at sort of medium long-term views. And I think retention will be a massive thing. So I think it will be about increasing benefits, work-life balance, policies. So I think it will be a really good market for people looking, but also clients looking for good candidates.
Yeah, completely agree. I think it's been crazy 3 years, and actually I think this would be a good year of kind of consolidation on the hiring side, but I completely agree with you. I think that people side, I've seen more and more businesses hiring chief people officers, and I think that's going to be a massive focus for everyone. So we've got a good lineup. I think we're going to be talking individually with lots of different people, including some of our chief people officers in these podcasts, to understand what that's all about. And I'm excited to hear lots about kind of what's going on in the world of finance from actual finance leaders.
Definitely. Well, okay. Well, great to speak this morning, Rosie.
And you, and look forward to podcast number 2.
Yeah, me too.